Now back in the application, and right now I am in the user resource. So we're going to continue and then finish this. So the next method that I need, as you can see right now, I only have two. I have the login and the register. So let's go ahead and add one to actually add a new user, and that's going to be from inside the application. And I explained that earlier. So the register will only take 3 parameters, right? It's only, well, 4. So the first name, last name, username, and email. That's when someone doesn't have an account and they need an account. This one I'm gonna add is for like an internal user. So if I'm a user and I have the appropriate permission and I need to add a new user into the application, so that way I can pass in a lot more information. So let's go ahead and add a post request. So we're gonna do post mapping, and we're gonna map this to add, right? So if you remember up there, we already have user, and then we have login, register, and this is gonna be add. So to access this endpoint, they're gonna have to go through user and then add, and then this is gonna return response entity. So we're gonna do public response entity, and it's gonna return a response entity of user, because we're gonna return the user that gets added, and we're gonna call it add new user. And here's gonna take a bunch of parameters. So let me create the body of the method, and so let's go back here. So we're gonna have to look for a lot of request parameters. So we're gonna do request param right here, and then you have to give it a name. So I'm gonna explain what this is doing in a minute, but let me finish typing it. So here we're gonna give it a name. Let's say this is the first name, right? So first name, and then we're gonna pass it in as a string. We're gonna give it the same name. So let's copy this and then pass it in here. So what we're doing here is passing a request param, right? So when I send the request and I send a request parameter with the request, Spring is gonna map this name and then pass it as this variable into this method. So if I send the request with first name as a request parameter, then it's gonna be mapped to this first name here. And this is gonna make more sense once I have the front end set up and then I'm sending the request into the back end. And then you'll see how I'm passing in the request parameters into the request itself. So let's copy this. I'm gonna have to have this a bunch of times because I have a lot of parameters that I'm expecting for add the new user. So okay, so that's how many I'm gonna need. So this is gonna be the last name, and I'm gonna copy this, and I'm gonna name this variable the same. So, and then the next one is gonna be the username. I'm gonna copy this as well, pass it in here as the username. Next one is going to be the email. Oops. So we pass in the email, copy this, and that's gonna be the email. Next one is the role, so they can pass in the role as well. So we're gonna copy this and pass the variable name as role as well. The next one is active, and I'm gonna copy this, active with a V, copy this, and then pass it over here. And next one is non-locked, so we're gonna do is non-locked, and we're gonna copy this as well, pass it in as the name of the variable. And the last one is going to be the profile picture. So you remember how you can add a new account without adding the profile picture? So for this, I'm gonna give it a name, right? So profile image, for instance, right? So this is gonna represent the profile image that they're gonna pass in, and of course we're gonna name it profile image, right? And this is not gonna be a string, it's gonna be a multi-part file. So multi-part, oops, there it is right here. So that's gonna be a multi-part file. But the reason I had to add this value here and I'm not adding it here, like as you can see in these other ones, I don't have this value. It's because I'm gonna pass in another attribute, and this is gonna be the required attribute, and I'm gonna make this false. Because when they're sending this request, I don't necessarily need an image. So I set required to false, meaning this request can come in and expecting all of those variables, but not this one, or all of those request parameters, but not this one. So even if the user didn't pass the profile image, what they can do, they can add a new user without a profile image, right? Without selecting an image for that user. So in that case, we will just give that user one of the default, RoboHash images. So that's why this is required false, because it's not really required into the request, and we need to remove this extra comma. So now that we have all of the required request parameters that we need to actually make the call, in this case, then we can actually make the call because we're ready. So here we're going to create a user, we're going to call it new user, and we're going to set it equals to user service, and then we're going to call the add user, and we're going to pass in everything. So first name, last name, username, email, and we're passing the role. And so I'm gonna go on a new line, and for the is active, right? Those are booleans, right? We can receive them as boolean, like I could just have this like this, boolean like this, and that would work fine. But the it's gonna make it a little bit not harder, but it's a lot easier to just receive it as a string when you're sending the request, because when you have a form in the HTML and you're sending a request, every field in the form is represented as a string. So that's why it's a lot easier to just do the conversion here in the actual file itself. But it's up to you. You can actually pass in a boolean. You can do the work in the front end. So here I'm gonna get I have to pass in the is known locked. So I'm gonna call the boolean class, and then I'm gonna call parse boolean on it, and then pass in the string. So here I'm just gonna pass in is not locked, and I'm gonna do the same thing for the is active, and comma in here, and I'll go is active like this. Okay, and then once I have that, and lastly I have to pass in the profile image. Okay, so this is gonna make the call to the actual service, and then it's gonna take all of these parameters and then process the request properly. And I can show you what this parse boolean is doing. So it's just taking the string and making sure it's returning true or false if the string is true. So if the string is true, or if the string is true with uppercase, or whatever the cases are in this whole string, it will still return either true or false if it's not. So if we have anything else, it's going to return false. If we have true with any case, which is why they're using equals ignore case, then it's going to return true. So all we have to make sure is this value here, when it's received here, it's represented as a string that's like this, that's true or true or anything like that, and then it should work fine. So we're going to take it as a string and then convert it as an actual boolean. And we're getting this error here because we have to add the exception that this method add new user throws on this method as well. As you can see, now we have all the exception. So now that we have this request, if everything is successful, we didn't have any errors or anything like that, then we can just go ahead and return a new response entity. And then we're gonna pass in the new user as the body of the request, and we pass in OK as the HTTP response code, just like that. So you can format, you can see how this is going all the way to the right. You can format this however you want. I like to keep mine, everything like on a straight line like this, but I know that's not the best practice, right? So you can see, I can even see everything that's over there, but that's just how I like it. I don't like when I have multiple lines. This, I didn't have a choice. I have so many parameters that I'm expecting that I didn't really have a choice. So I have it like this, like on a no line. But as long as your line is going off the screen, then you definitely need to put it on a no line. So technically, normally that would look like this, right? It would probably look like this, like this. Okay, and I just don't like that. I just like it like this, So, but that's just a preference, not the best practice. You want to see everything on the screen. You don't want anything to go off the screen. But that's just me. That's just how I like it. So, I took a lot of time explaining what those are doing and everything here. So when we're doing the next one, like the update or to, find a user or present a list of users and things like that, I'm going to go a little bit faster so that we can finish this. But I wanted to, go through every single aspect of this method. So those are request parameters, which we're going to pass with the request. So we're going to give them this specific names. These names needs to match. So if I'm passing in the first name, the request parameter name should be first name. And then the value is going to be whatever the value is for the first name, for instance, like Joe or John. So those names as the request parameter names should match. And that's what we have to do when we're sending the request. So we're going to continue this in the next lecture.